It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson.
Hello everybody to another episode of Pure Performance. As you can hear from my Austrian accent, I am not Brian Wilson, but I'm Andy Grabner. And unfortunately, Brian couldn't make it today, but he asked me to take the leading role of today's podcast, and I'm very happy today. Well, first of all, I don't have a joke because Brian typically tries to make a joke either of my Austrian heritage or something else that he thinks is funny. Today, no jokes, just pure business. And I am very happy that I have a colleague of mine today, Barbara Ogris, as a guest. Servus, Barbara.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for making time. Is this your first podcast?
It's my first podcast, yes.
Thanks
for having me.
Of course. It's the first and most likely not the last, because I know you're doing some really great things at Dynatrace, and I'm sure also outside of Dynatrace, before you started at Dynatrace, you have a lot of experience, and I'm pretty sure not only my audience, but other audiences can benefit from it. Now, before, Barbara, I let you introduce yourself and give some background, I want to tell the audience why I have you on the podcast. It was a couple of months ago, and I just looked into the Slack conversation that we had. We were doing some research internally in my team. So we're doing DevRel, developer relationships, and we try to figure out what type of content do we need to create, like the podcast content, the YouTube videos, to really help our target audience. And as the name implies, Pure Performance or my observability clinics, it's all about performance engineering, observability, DevOps SRE. And then I stumbled upon your name because you within Dynatrace have started a program or a project. You can probably tell more about this, but you started talking about target personas and using target personas to better drive product innovation, product experience, product development. And that was really fascinating for me, because I think what we are doing in general not well as an industry, and that also includes what I'm doing as content creator. I think we don't think well enough in the beginning about who is the target persona, what's their pain, and how can we help them. And this is why I invited you, because I want to first of all learn now more about you, who you are, your background. And then we jump into the topic of target personas and how does this now change the way we develop products and features in Dynatrace. And then hopefully I can also extract some of the knowledge and give to the audience that is listening today. So Barbara, now to you. Who are you? Background.
So hi again. My name is Barbara, and I'm with Dynatrace now for a bit more than 1.5 years. I'm working in the field of application security, and I'm a senior product experience designer. And before working here, I was in marketing. So my main focus was lead generation. And there, of course, personas play a big role. So that's kind of helpful for our topic today. And my main focus and my daily work is that I kind of maintain the end-to-end process of our application security users, guiding them from the alert from a vulnerability to all the details, and then in the end to really remediating the problem. So I try to rather focus on user experience than user interface design. And I would say my main focus is always to put the user in the center.
Mm-hmm. That's first of all a couple of things. App security, that's a very important topic for those listeners that don't know it. Right, we at Dynatrace, we have focused over the last year and a half, maybe even 2 years almost, I guess, on application security as a new solution. But what you just said is interesting. The differentiation between user experience and user interface, for me, I guess I always thought the user interface is what defines user experience. Or how do you see this differently?
I think one doesn't go without the other. Mm-hmm. So to have a good user experience, you need to have a good UI, so good user interface design. But so I think the focus is a bit different. For user interface design, you really focus on how something looks, how the page is structured, how you guide the user through the page with, I don't know, colors, headings, buttons, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
For user experience is more focusing on the overall journey. So how the user works with the feature, how he or she might interact with it, where, I don't know, just how the experience in the end is when working with our product. But as I said, the one doesn't go without the other. I just wanted to say that my main focus is really lying on defining those user journeys, identifying the pains of the users throughout the user journeys, understanding what they need, where they need it, when they need it, how we can fix that for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, years ago, when I was still coding, I remember these user stories that started with, as a user, I want to do X, Y, Z. Why is this no longer enough, and how does the target persona concept change this?
So as a user is super generic, and it kind of, the thing is that when you have as a user, then you suggest that you just have one user, which is wrong, because you normally don't just have one user, you have different user groups. So that's the first thing that I would argue against. And having a name saying, for example, as Eric, I want to, as Archie, I want to, really helps me to put me in the shoes of this special user. And it also helps me to identify the different needs for one feature. So Eric might have other pains and needs than Archie. So that means the feature that we are developing and the stories and epics that we are generating need to fulfill different needs for different people, and not just one. So there's not just one value that it should that it can deliver for all the users, but it needs to be different values that come out of a user story for the different user groups that we have.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is especially true for, obviously we at Dynatrace, we build a software intelligence platform that has grown over the years. So that means we have many different capabilities in the product, many different features, and obviously they're all targeted towards different user groups. But again, this is another podcast about Dynatrace. So that means anywhere in the world, right? Whatever product you're selling, you are, unless it's a very niche product and it's very clearly defined who your potential user is, I think you always have different user groups, target personas.
Yes.
And now, how do you? So you said when you started with Dynatrace roughly about a year and a half ago, were you asked to do this? Did you say you want? How does this start?
So I got my first task, and I was super eager to start and everything. And then I thought, okay, I don't even know who I really do that for. Of course, I had a person in my head, and I'm sure everyone of the team had, but I wasn't sure if that is true. Also because I was kind of new to application security in general. So I struggled a bit because I thought, okay, now I can make an assumption, but I don't know if that assumption is true. And then I may create a solution to a pain that doesn't even exist. So my internal trigger was that I just wanted to learn who I built this feature for before starting to build the feature, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the process started.
Mm-hmm. And then, I would assume, right? Now we live in the software business. In the software business, creating a product and then pushing it out and then seeing if it's used or not is probably cheaper, quote unquote, than, let's say, building something like building a new car, and that's going to be very expensive. And if you then figure out, damn, we didn't think about the target persona and now we don't sell it, but we spend millions of euros to develop it. But still, right, even though software is relatively, quote unquote, cheap, it's actually not cheap because you have a lot of resources that are tied up. And then in the end, you only have so much runway in terms of revenue or money until you can actually then, you need to sell at some point. And therefore, it's I guess, it makes so much more sense from the beginning. We always think about who is your real target persona? What's the pain point that you're solving for this particular target persona? And now coming back to your story, that means you started this whole thinking about who are we actually building this for? how did you start? What was your approach? Or any best practices that you have?
Yeah, I think the first thing you or everyone should do is just to sit together with the team and see if all the assumptions that you have in your head, everyone else also has in their heads, and then just gather everything that's there to have kind of a starting point. I mean, it's also a good idea that if you have data analytics in place that already tell you something of the users, to, of course, include that in your first persona drafts. But then I think the most important thing was to get people from different roles in one room and just gather everything that was in their heads to kind of start the persona journey. So the design thinking method that we used was empathy maps, where you just take a piece of paper and divide it in 4 sections, and then put what the user says, thinks, does, and feels. And the cool thing there is that, so whenever I did that before, is that normally what the user says is not necessarily what he really thinks or feels. So I like the exercise a lot because, people tend to say different things that they maybe think or feel, and it helps to kind of identify the real pain behind what the user is maybe saying or the persona is saying. So that's why I really like that exercise. And we did that together, and then just collected sticky notes basically. And after that, I put it in a template. And we added some demographic information, some background, for example, education and what the role might be, and stuff like that. And after that, we had an internal workshop trying to get personas from these roles to kind of, to kind of verify what we came up with. And in the end, we then had let's call it proto-persona. So a proto-persona is a persona that is just based on assumptions, where we didn't validate anything yet. And with that, we kind of started then. So I'd say then the most important thing is to just get it out, show it to your team, tell them then that these are now the personas that you're all working with for now. And then, just work with them.
Mm-hmm. Now you said, because AppSec is a new solution within Dynatrace, which means completely new audience, and which makes it even more natural to actually do these workshops and figure out who do we want to sell this new feature to. I guess with other existing features, it's a little easier because we've been doing this for 15 years, and so we have a good understanding. But for every new feature, for every new kind of solution you're building, for every new product, for every new service, this just makes so much sense. From the AppSec perspective, can you give us an example of a persona that you have now come up with and kind of shaped and also validated, and give us a little bit of the pains, what they feel, what they want?
Sure. So we established 4 personas in total. I think 4 is a good amount to start with. And Archie, I would pick Archie, our security architect, for our main, or not main persona, but it's the persona that we always have in all of our stories, because it's the persona with the most fundamental and deep knowledge about security, meaning that a lot of people in the company would approach him for help and security insights, which then leads to the first pain that he has, because he, of course, is kind of a bottleneck because everyone needs his expertise. Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, he has a lot of dependencies and a lot of people to talk with, because he's also the most important sparring partner for our Chief Information Security Officer, helping him decide what's the next important thing to add to the feature set is. And when then there's a buying decision, our Chief Information Security Officer would also go to Archie, mm-hmm. To get insights and to get advice what should be bought next. So I think it's a major player for us in security and a major role where a lot of information is centered, but then also a lot of dependencies are there. So yeah, I think that's the persona that's most important for our journey and for all of our user stories. Also, because in the product, when there's this, so I mentioned this end-to-end user journey, and Archie would be the persona that really walks from step one to the last step, like the whole user journey, and really uses all of our pages and all of our different features. So that also helps because we get a lot of understanding of how he uses our product and what he needs, and where then there is this point where maybe a developer takes over or someone else takes over and he's kind of out of the process. So yeah.
Cool. And then that's interesting. So because I mean, I know the product. And so basically you say whoever, I mean, he's a critical role that it needs to be made aware of when there are security problems, how obviously severe they are, but then there's a clear handoff to, let's say, the developers. And that's when you have also in the product, I guess, an option where you say, now I want to hand this off to team ABC who needs to then take care of it. Because in the end, you then solve a problem for him, right? You give him an overview of what is critical, but then hand it off to the development team so that they can fix things so that he can focus again on other stuff.
Yes, and also you kind of get the answer to where you need to start the new user journey for the next persona. And how it should best start. So if you know where the handover happens, and if you know how the personas use your product, then you know where the handover is, and you can create a smoother handover for the different personas in the end. So when Archie talks to the developers and then says, okay, from the detail page on, where do you really need to fix like a certain security issue in the end, when you know where that happens, then it can be smoother. Then you know maybe you need to have a tool or an option to create a ticket there or something like that. So it's smoother to hand over from one persona to the other.
And that's why I assume, right, you said in the beginning you start with the proto-persona, but then you validate your assumptions with some real people. Now, my question is, who is the real Archie?
So the thing is, we first validated internally, and then we tried, of course, to validate with customers. And I think their sales also comes into place, of course, because you kind of get a recommendation for who is a good sparring partner for doing exercises like that. And then the best, so if that is possible, and if the customers take the time, then it's super awesome to do interviews, because you talk to them, and by talking to them, you get so much more information out of them than by just sending a survey. I mean, we also did a survey and got a lot of insightful values back, but I would really recommend to do an interview if you have the opportunity. Because then you can also ask questions like, okay, and now please tell me, how is that in your day-to-day work? And they will come up with examples and share insights with you that really help you then in the end. Also, what I learned is there's, of course, differences in every company. And if you have enough customers to talk to, then you will also get a pattern in the end where you see, okay, bigger companies tend to do it like that. Smaller companies tend to do it like this, stuff like that. So for me, having those interviews was really like the best thing to get a feeling for how valid our proto-personas are. And I mean, it doesn't mean that because we had those interviews and we validated those proto-personas now that we never reiterate on that. So a persona is a concept that is never done. So you always have to validate it. You always have to, I think the needs change, the product grows, the feature set grows. So it gets more complicated maybe, you always have to reiterate on your proto-personas or personas to deliver the best product in the end.
Well, it's like a real persona, right? A real persona doesn't stop to evolve either. We change every day because we make new experiences, and that defines the path we take. I also wanted to say, I agree with you that it's so valuable to have one-to-one interactions. You call them customers or users or the community. I'm also I always find it very fortunate for me to travel and then being at a sales show, right, at a conference, and then speaking with 10, 50, 100 people every day, where you can then learn from them who they are. My best question when people come to the booth, they typically ask, so what do you do? And then I ask the question back, actually, what do you do? Because I want to figure out what you do and how we can help you. And I think we're really fortunate that we have this opportunity to learn from them, and then take this what we learn and bring it back to the product so that we can actually build something that helps these people.
Yes.
Quick question now. You mentioned, the interviews are great. So you are figuring out what the real persona, the target persona is. Then you build the product. Now, obviously, we are here at Pure Performance, and we talk a lot about performance, about monitoring, about observability. Do you then validate the product also through monitoring? So do you then really know if the people are actually then using the product in the way that you've designed it and that you've designed the user experience? Do you look at monitoring data?
Yeah, I think there's two different approaches. The one would be user tests before you launch it, actually, and then afterwards, of course, as you said, monitoring how users interact with the product. That means having event handlers and stuff like that in place to just figure out where do they click, how long do they stay on a certain feature, how do they use it? Is it maybe, I don't know, there is an info icon, do they ever hover over it? Do they ever read that? Do we really need that? So things like that. But as I said, I think user tests are also super, super important beforehand, before launching it, just to understand how users really click for your prototype. Mm-hmm. I think so. You can validate the stuff that you do 100 times, but then seeing a user really using it makes such a difference. And I think that so with that in place beforehand, that can save a lot of time afterwards, because introducing a feature to a customer means that the user needs to learn a new pattern. Mm-hmm. And can do great UX and it can be super easy for the user, but still the user learned this pattern. If you then find out that you did something wrong and that you actually need to change it again, it's a pain for the user, because the user needs to relearn and needs to adapt to the feature again and stuff like that. So I would really recommend to do user tests beforehand and observe and let the user talk as much as possible, and then find out if you really are on the right track for launching.
Yeah. And then, right, if you build something new and you have the ability to do user tests where you have direct interactions, that's great at scale. You can also do this through even things like feature flagging, A/B testing. I think that's very common techniques, right, to figure this out.
Exactly. So we always try to do that. And as you said, then after launching, of course, we have measures in pain to learn from that, to see how many people interact with the feature, how they interact. And then we also learn from that data, of course. So we take that data and then try to iterate on it. So, of course, we're working in an agile team. So that means we always want to iterate, because we always want to do better. Of course, every iteration should be beneficial for the user. Mm-hmm. So we take that data and then we try to iterate on our user journeys, iterate on how the structure of the page is, just come up maybe with new ways to visualize stuff, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Did you, and this goes into a topic that Brian and I have been discussing quite a bit over the last couple of episodes. We talked a lot about SLOs, service level objectives, and kind of also doing business level monitoring. So using like a tool like Dynatrace to figure out, how are users actually working with the software that you're monitoring, how many people come, how many people use a certain feature. And one of the things, the challenges that I've seen a lot is that people say, SLOs is a great concept, service level objectives or business level objectives, but we don't really know what this means for us. We don't really know what the expectations are. And now the question to you, did you, with developing a new feature like AppSec, did you have expectations on, and that you also then monitor and validate against, like how many people, how many new users you wanted to onboard to that feature? Did you have expectations on how the features were used? And then did you monitor it and validate it against your expectations?
Yes. So we had, of course, expectations and assumptions, but to be truly honest here, with a new solution or a new feature, it's always really hard to guess. Of course, you have a gut feeling and you have data in place and that you can base your assumptions on, but in the end, it's assumptions. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as you don't have data that proves your assumptions, it's still just assumptions. Mm-hmm. So I think in some fields we were pretty right with our guessing and assumptions. But then in others, maybe we didn't consider this or didn't consider that, and so they were quite off. But the cool thing is when working agile, that doesn't really, like, it impacts you, of course, but you are so quick with iterating and bringing out the better iteration of your last iteration, so that it doesn't really hurt. If you're really agile, you should really, like, that's a quick process. You can always bring out the new iteration and a new version that is better than the last. And I think, so I think having those assumptions and having those expectations is good to have like a base to start from somewhere. But in the end, you need to validate and then iterate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also one thing that I wanted to highlight, this is why I was really so intrigued to talk about this topic today. And I always try to find the link to some of the other topics we've discussed with our audience in the past. If you're listening to this and you are trying to define SLO, service level objectives, and you go to your business and then they say, well, we don't know what the objectives really are, make something up. I think this is the wrong thing. I think you should now ask the question, hey, do you have a target persona in mind? Who are the target persona? What do we expect them to do? How many people of the target personas are in our addressable market? And what do they expect, right? Do they expect 1 second response time when they open up this feature, or 5 seconds? Do we expect 5 people a day or 50 people an hour? And things like this are better expectations that are now aligned with target personas. Because every target persona, as you also said, like Archie, you're expecting Archie to click through every page, while you have developers, different target personas that hit a different page. And I'm pretty sure you have a certain ratio in mind of how many Archies you have and how many developers get in place. And this is all valuable data that helps us to define SLOs for production, but also going back before production, because just, Barbara, that you understand, Brian and I have a big history in performance testing and performance engineering. So one of the biggest challenges there is always to figure out what is a realistic performance test, and knowing how many different target personas you have and how big this target persona batch is and how many will use the product at a given time frame will help you define and run better performance tests. And this is why I really like that we have this discussion, because for me, and for you especially, I think it's just common sense to have target personas. But for some of the listeners, maybe it's like, maybe I should ask my company if we have target personas. And if not, we should discuss this. And if we have, then, give me the details.
Yeah. Totally true. And as I said, I think that the most important thing is then to first find out if everyone has the same persona in mind. Mm-hmm. And then if that is true, start the whole persona process. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To not head into different directions, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Because organizations are big, like ours is big, right? And we have, I started, when I approached you, we were going down the track of defining target personas, but then we tried to figure out if somebody has already done it, and then we stumbled across your name, and then we kind of figured out, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's make sure we all have the same picture in mind when we talk about a particular persona.
Yeah, and I think it also helps in discussions. I think when doing a new feature or some big new thing, everyone has this vision, and sometimes it's just not the same, or you have contradicting opinions on stuff. And I think it really helps to then have a persona, because then it's not about your opinion anymore. Mm-hmm. It's about putting yourself in the shoes of that persona and then arguing from that point and not from your point of view. And I think that also makes it easier to define an MVP, to even discuss things together, because then it's not your opinion anymore.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So that means today, what's the situation today when you define new features? Well, what has changed to when you started a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I think a lot has changed, actually. So we, of course, established the personas, had a meeting with the whole team and explained to the whole team what we came up with. After that, we included personas in all of our epics and stories, as I mentioned. So whenever we start writing an epic or a story, it always starts with the persona as a persona I want to. And then what also is really cool is that now when we do presentations or have meetings together, it's easier to tell the story, because you can always start with, now we have our persona Archie, and as you know, Archie is like this or is like that and needs this and that. We came up with that new feature because that serves, or that helps solving this and that pain point. So I think it also helps in storytelling and being on the same page with new stuff that we have. And then, of course, it helped the team a lot. I think the cool thing that happened in our team is that we really only just take the names now of our personas, and we don't say our users, we really say like Eric or Archie. So it really kind of, it's in our daily lives now, and everyone just talks about those personas from now on. And I think that helps, as I said, in discussions and in our meetings a lot, just being on the same page. Always having the user in mind, as I said in the beginning.
Yeah. No, right. I like the example. And as you explained this, you always have now, let's say, Archie, coming back to Archie as a person. If we consider, right, let's say Archie had a bad night because he was woken up because of a security issue.
Yes.
Now, how can we make sure that he will have a happy ending of the day? And what can we do, right? And so now we need to design features exactly for that persona, but also maybe that persona in a certain specific situation.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we do. So we really try to come up with a story, because then it's easier to relate. And one thing we did there is that we have this one day in the life of thing. So that means you really try to sketch a day of the persona, from getting up to really going to bed, so that you understand where this persona gets the news from, which channels does that persona like to use to stay informed, what are the touch points and stuff, and then also what the pain points are throughout the day, what the issues are, where maybe there's stress or things like that. And then also to understand when maybe is their person more likely to take a decision or stuff like that. So it really helped, I think, to try to have a day of Archie, or live a day of Archie. Virtual, of course, but
yeah, of course. Yeah. Cool. Hey, to Barbara, to conclude, what's next? Is there, are you done, or what's the next step?
So as I said, we're never done. Personas are never done. We of course iterate and always try to improve with how we shape our personas, and then of course we want to roll that out in the whole company. So we already started an initiative to do that now. We are at the moment coming up with templates and just to give like guidance to all the other teams that are working on new features, and just roll it out to every other team. What we achieved so far is that we have proto personas now for everyone, but then also give a little bit of guidance on how to validate and how to do those interviews maybe, and the service and stuff like that.
Very nice. Barbara, thank you so much for, first of all, agreeing to doing this podcast. I know it was your first, and you did an awesome job because remember, you are the expert in that topic. And that's always what I remind people of that are starting with either public speaking or doing things like this. You are the expert in that topic, and you are sharing your experience, and that's great. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much. It was an awesome experience. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. And also, just for the listeners, if you have any questions, right, you will probably hear this on your most favorite podcast app or on YouTube or wherever else we publish this. If you have questions, feel free to drop us a note at pureperformance@dynatrace.com, or you can also find us on Twitter. It's pure_DT. And we will definitely make sure to... Barbara, we typically do a little write-up of the episodes. So if there's any links of additional material that we can publicly link to, you just let me know, and then we'll add it to the summary. Okay. All right. With this, I wish all of you a happy, good summer, because we are taking a short break over the next couple of weeks. Well, I guess when this airs, I'm probably already back from vacation. Barbara, what about you? Have you any vacation plans, or are you done?
I have, of course. I'm planning to go to America, and I still hope that works.
Oh, good. Where you go?
Going to Orlando because I'm a huge Universal Studio fan.
So Florida in the summer. That's mean it's going to be really hot, I guess.
To be boiling, but yeah, worth it.
Yeah, very good. Well, then enjoy your trip, and for the rest of the listeners, hopefully you took a couple of notes today. I hope it was inspiring for me. It was a great new topic, and I definitely can see how it spans over to what we are typically doing. We talk about DevOps, SRE, specifying SLOs, and really in the end, we try to help our organizations build software that really solves the pain points of your end users. But for that, you need to know your end users, and I think this is where target personas come in, because you then better identify these personas. I think you can feel empathy. That's also why I like the empathy map so much. That's the one thing that I took away with me. And that's it. With this, I want to say goodbye. See you next time. Bye-bye.